What does a dash agent look for in a crawl space? Honestly, look, externalities that affect a house, water is the #1 enemy of a home. We've all heard this 1,000 times. It can get you leaking through the roof, coming through the sky. It can get you leaking through the pipes, coming through the walls, or it can get you from up underneath, coming in the crawl space. And so, first thing I'm going to look at is not just in the crawl space. I'm going to look outside of the crawl space, because the only problems that can arise in a crawl space is moisture. Moisture can happen from a couple of different things. It could happen, I suppose, the roof could leak and it could like wind down in between the walls and fall in the crawl space. Well, I should probably be able to figure that one out, so I should start by looking at the roof. Second, I might have some leaky pipes, so maybe go to the water meter and check the water meter and just say, okay, no leaks in the pipes. The only other way that water could start to then get into that crawl space is from the outside. So I'm going to walk the outside first, and I'm going to look for a negative slope in the yard. If I've got a hill behind my house that's 100 feet tall and it's coming right to the crawl space, well, I could look in the crawl space for problems, and the problem's going to be water, but the problem isn't going to be answered here. The problem's going to be answered outside of that house. And so what I've got to do is get, and you've heard this before, 10 feet away from the house, the ground needs to be 6 inches lower than the house. That will, well, that'll satisfy code, but more importantly, any hill that is coming up, water can't go uphill. And so if we can get 10 feet away from the house, 6 inches lower, we're going to keep water from coming in. Now, once we get into that crawl space, there are a couple of things that can happen. If there's no water coming in, and that's the #1 enemy of a home, if I've ruled that one out, that doesn't change the fact that moisture can come in. And so what you're really looking for is microbial growth. You're looking for you're going to hear things like mold or mildew, and I promise anybody who points at something and says that's mold or that's mildew doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. Run from that person. Now, I can say that is not wood, and that shouldn't be there. I don't know if it's mold or black mold or mildew, but I know that it is microbial fungal growth, and we want to keep that from happening. And so you can do a couple of things. And so you're going to look at the floor joists, and that's really the first thing you look at. Do I see any discoloration in the floor joists? You're going to look at the insulation in between the floor joists. Remember, insulation, you should always see the pink on our side. You should not see the paper on our side. So from our side, I see that pink. It should look cloud-like and fluffy. If I see it stringing out, well, that tells you that there's moisture that's dripping down. And that moisture, if it's not coming from the outside in, then it's going to be coming from a lack of movement of air. And so stale air is really bad. And so you're going to hear things like in the summer, those air vents on the outside of the foundation, you want to have those open so you can try and get a little bit of airflow going underneath there. A lot of people are going to say, no, you want to shut them in the summer because that will allow moisture to come in. No, moisture is coming in. I promise your crawl space is not airtight unless you have an airtight one, in which case there's your answer, and you don't have to worry about watching this video because you've already addressed the problems. But if you have not addressed the problems and you're looking in that crawl space, you see that moisture in there, first thing, look on the floor joists, I see microbial growth. Second thing, I'm looking at the insulation and I'm seeing it dripping. And then the third thing I'm looking at is going to be on the floor, and the floor, I'm looking for a vapor barrier that will cover 100% of the pervious soil. Pervious soil, the word pervious just means water can pass through it. Impervious is water cannot pass through it. And so if a vapor barrier is basically plastic, it's 10 mil thick. That's not 10 milliliters. That's actually a density measurement that they use. And so 10 mil thick, you can find this stuff at Home Depot. And you put that across the ground, and it has to cover 100% of the pervious soil. And so you'll see people put it on the ground and run it up the walls, and they'll tape it. And if you have those three things, or if you look at those three things and any one of those three things is happening or missing, then you might have a problem. So when I go into a crawl space, I'm looking for three things immediately. First, I'm looking on the ground to see if there is a vapor barrier. Second, I'm looking at the insulation to see if it's sagging or if it's cloud-like. And then third, I'm looking at the floor joist to see if I see any discoloration or fungal growth.